I've been so excited to make this video about this book. Hello storytellers, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Lauren. I'm an actress, teacher and all-round storyteller, sharing my adventures in parks, pages and pixels. And today we are talking about Hiding Him, which is a book by Adam Hattan. Now, the reason I picked this book up, I will be honest, is because of the author. I am a huge fan of Adam Hattan. If you don't know who he is, he's a YouTuber and content creator all about the Disney parks across the whole of the world, particularly in the USA. He's UK based, so he does like a lot of travel back and explains tips, tricks, advice, preferences, etc. But he also writes travel books about going to the parks, how to book them, where to stay, his advice on how to get discounts. He's done it for the Disney Cruise Line. My favourite of his content is anything with him and his best friend Gary C. Honestly, chef's kiss. I think I'm in love with them. If I'm sad, I put them on. If I'm happy, I put them on. I stan the friendship. I stan their channels. I absolutely adore them. So when he announced that he had written his first book, that is not a travel guide, is a story by him, all his thoughts and imaginations and characters, I had to get it. It was an instant add to basket. So the book is called Hiding Him. Now look at the cover. He loves a good foiling. If you watch he's got a video on his YouTube channel. If you watch it, it explains how he came up with the cover concepts, how he came up with the colour schemes, who he had to help him. Highly recommend watching it, particularly if you are interested in becoming a writer, because he goes through every single step of how he did it. And he published independently, from what I remember. Yeah. So he did this on his own. On his own, like no publisher. His money, his work. So obviously we have to support. And I'm gonna be honest, I absolutely loved it. Didn't put it down from the moment I picked it up. I read it on a holiday, so I think it helped because it meant I had the time to do it and to relax and really settle into it. But if I hadn't read it if I hadn't read it on holiday, I would have struggled to put it down. I read it through dinner, the mini disco, when I got into bed, when I woke up. I did not stop. It was my living, breathing world for like a good day and a half. I really, really love this book. So before I get into explaining my thoughts and feelings on this book, the pros, the cons, etc., this is the blurb to give you an insight into what this book's about without giving any spoilers just yet. So let's get one thing straight. Cameron Hawkins isn't. What he is hopelessly single and longing to escape his village in the end of nowhere. That is until a newcomer arrives, Finn. He's tall, dark, obscenely handsome and somewhat of an enigma. Is Finn the answer to Cam's happily ever after? Or will shadows of the past stand in the way of their palpable chemistry? Hiding Him explores coming of age, coming out and hearts coming together. In this warm and cosy read, get ready to laugh with friends, relish in a little spice, and gird your loins for several adrenaline-charged moments. It's such a good blurb. Yeah. Tells you exactly what this story is going to be about. It tells you the two main characters, Cam and Finn. It tells you they're both going to experience some kind of relationship. Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? It mentions it's them coming of age, so growing up, they're in their teens. It mentions coming out, which gives a hint, well, multiple hints in this towards the fact it's LGBTQIA+. I mean, just let's get one thing straight, Cameron Hawkins isn't. What a line. It grips you instantly into knowing what the story's about. Fantastic, fantastic blurb. And actually, it does match the story. It's not a blurb that sort of gets you invested and you get halfway through and go, this isn't describing it. It does describe it perfectly. So in terms of the genre and the audience of this book, yes, it lingers in the romance novel, it lingers in the coming of age novels. It does mention that there's a little spice, and I cannot stress enough, it is a little spice. This is not a spicy romance novel. They're not my vibe. Sorry, just my opinion. I like a little romance in a book, and the fact they've told me from the start that's what's in this book, I've got that expectation. And although it is written with teenage characters, sort of elder teenage characters, they're doing the A-levels in the UK, so they're around the age of sort of 16 to 18. I think at this point they're all hitting 18, if I remember rightly. It's been a while since I read this book now, it's been a few months. Although it is a coming of age book, it doesn't feel like it's written for teenagers. It feels quite well-rounded in who it's written for. That being said, I probably wouldn't give this to any of my students who are under the age of 16, just because of that little bit of spice. It is minor, but just that alone would make me linger in giving it to some of my younger students. But I would recommend this to anyone above the age of 16. In terms of the pace, it's a nice cozy read. There are moments where you sort of feel the adrenaline with the character of like the romance moment that's about to happen, and there's moments where it slows down. It's a pleasant read. It's not fast paced like an action, it's not too slow, it is just right. Very Goldilocks in me, but it is a really nice paced book. In terms of its structure, you mostly get it from the point of view of the character of Cameron. He is sort of the lead character. He is the lead character. It flips between him and Finn, but it is 85% of the time his perspective of events that are happening. There are moments in the book where it changes perspective, and it may be some of the other characters like Jerry. But typically it's from Cam's perspective. So that being said, it is written mostly in the first person. There's little moments where it's not quite as confident in the first person narrative style, but again, it mostly is. For example, Robin has this impeccable ability to roll her eyes in such a way that you can almost hear the grinding of stones as she does it. She pushes back her tightly wound braids just for me to watch her dark brown eyes revolve in classic fashion. So obviously that is Cam's perspective. He's, you know, eyes and me's. So it is first person. The characters, were they believable? 100% yes. After the first chapter. I'm sorry, Adam, but there is one piece of feedback I have. Not that I am the best writer in the world either, but I do love a story. That is what my profession is in. Because it's written in the perspective of Cam, you get a lot of detail about all the characters around you, particularly Finn, who, you know, is the love interest. What I found was in the first chapter or two, I didn't know who Cam was. I didn't get much of a description of him. How does he dress? What does he like about himself? What features doesn't he like about himself? It was lacking that personability for that character. Now, it does develop throughout the book, and because I know Adam Hattan from YouTube, you kind of place him, or at least I did when I was reading it, kind of place a younger version of him in the place of Cam, and that felt quite realistic and natural to me. I don't think that was his intention. So the only character to begin with that I feel like gets a slight disjustice, ironically, is Cameron. Simply because there isn't much of a description of who he is. So if I go to the very, very front of the book, the very, very first few words. Go around, she bellows. Bev, for me to go around, I'd have to go down through music and back up by the library to get to the room that is literally right there. I say, gesturing towards the classroom door across the hall. Not my problem. You can see I'm mopping. Spits the haggard dinner lady. I look at her, then at 7B, mere footsteps away. Bev, floors are for walking on, not for eating off, I say. And so it establishes very quickly where we are, you know, and who he is. to an extent, but as you continue to read through, it's all about his interactions with other people. But you don't necessarily get a description of him and what people think of him, or what he thinks of him, and what he thinks of himself does happened eventually. But I do feel like there could be more about Cameron to begin with. Tell me who he is. Even if it's the first chapter we establish where we are, and the second chapter it's like from the perspective of his parent, or from Jerry, or from Robin, someone, a teacher, would have been nice. So let's talk about what went well, what works well, and what else I would change. There is not much. I will be honest, I've given kind of the only critique I have. Other than I would like a sequel, please. I do actually find the creative writing of the other characters is quite strong. So I've got this extract from page 2. It says, after chemistry, Rob and I walked down to Spanish when Jerry and her satchel barrel up the corridor behind us. Her long ginger curls dance over the Year 7's heads as they each recoil from her flailing mane. She announces the occasion, sorry, as she barges through groups of lower years to catch up. It gives us enough to get an idea of what Jerry looks like. It's, for an introduction to a character, it talks about her main feature. We know she's got this big curly hair, and we established that she is taller than Year 7, which isn't hard. In the UK, being in Year 7, you're 11 to 12 years of age. I say that, I've got one student who's like twice my height, and he's literally 12, so you get what I'm saying. So in terms of descriptions, it's pretty good. As time goes on through their dialogue, you get to know the characters a bit more. So in terms of using dialogue in the writing, Adam Hattan's been very good at it. Very good at it. And all of the characters feel very fleshed out. Like, he knows these people. He knows what Jerry likes and dislikes. He's made it clear how she differs from Robin and from so-and-so and from so-and-so. And he doesn't just focus on this one relationship with Cam and Finn, although it is the primary relationship. He does delve into the others and how that impacts the dialogue and interactions with the other characters. So, when things aren't going right with Robin's relationship, it's how does Robin now behave and react with Finn having a developing relationship, etc, etc. So in terms of like my favourite part of the book or my favourite chapter, I don't have a specific chapter in mind. I've got lots of moments from this story that are like flicking through my head. I actually think my absolute favourite part of this book is a very simple conversation that Cam and Finn have. Cameron has come out as gay. People know he's gay. Everyone's accepted him as gay. And he comes from a family that seem to be pretty accepting of him and who he is. Finn, unfortunately, is the opposite, and he's an enigma because he's keeping a lot secret. I'm not going to spoil the secrets, but one of them is that he hasn't fully come out to the world. His mum sort of knows, and that's all I'm going to say. And so it's these two people who clearly like each other, clearly have a chemistry, but how do they navigate being together when one hasn't fully allowed himself to be who he is yet? And what pressures does that put on them? They're only teenagers. They're still, although I say they're 16 to 18, they're still very young. I mean, I look at my six formers and they're simultaneously incredibly young but incredibly mature, and they're brilliant. But I do sit there like, that's so much pressure. Just chill out. You got time. But at that age, with the hormones, you feel like everything is so important, so big, so now. And Adam did a really beautiful job of creating that dialogue between these two characters about the fear of people's reactions and responses. And again, I think it's going to relate to a lot of people who've had similar experiences. I mean, my experience with being part of the LGBTQIA community, I think it's not completely similar to Cam's, it's not completely similar to Finn's. I'm somewhere in between in a sort of weird way. So reading it from both sides felt very connected to me. So who should read this? I will be honest, I think everyone should read this at some point. Just because I think it can educate a lot of people on the dialogue around coming out. And I think it's still a dialogue that needs a lot of work in the way that we communicate with each other. And this book demonstrates very clearly from sort of every perspective of how to cope with that, and the dialogue that does create conflict and issues, and dialogue that does work to help the situation. So I personally think everyone should read it. The people who I think will read it, obviously the LGBTQIA community, any of my fellow comrades, this is a book for you. Trust me, it's heartfelt, it's warming, it's cozy. I read this on holiday, but I will probably read this again later this year when it's super rainy and autumnal outside and I'm sat on my couch. This is one of the books I will go back to and I will read again. And I feel like that would be like the perfect setting. I know I've got so many books I need to read, but I may even take it with me on holiday to Cumbria, because me and Dan have said we're going to do one day where we just sit in nature and read. And this isn't the book I'm meant to be doing that with. I've got a whole pile of books I need to read. It's never ending. But I'm tempted to bring this with me, maybe for car journeys, but yeah, I would 100% read this again, and I do think it's a very important book in the modern world. Did it change my perspective on anything? I mean, yeah, to an extent. I work with kids. I talk to them, I see them all the time. It is literally my whole life at this point. I'm an auntie as well to teenagers and to toddlers. So I thought there was nothing else I could learn about kids, and I was wrong. Very wrong. I thought this experience I'd had as a teacher and an auntie, and you know, my friends having kids, I thought I knew it all, but actually this reminded me I don't. You know, like I said, my coming out story fits somewhere in between these two characters, and the reactions they got from others, I could sort of place people in my life into those roles as well. But I think it's definitely helped me learn dialogue to help me with some of my students if they do ever come to me and have that conversation of what to do and what not to do. I do feel like this book has helped me with that. Yeah. So if I was to give this a star rating out of 5, although I do feel like some of the descriptions, particularly about Cam, could use some improvement, I would read it again, and I do want a sequel, and I do think this story and these characters are memorable, individual and well-rounded. So I am actually going to give it a 5 out of 5. It is a 5-star book. You've heard it here. It is 5 stars. Yeah, I love it. I think it's just a really good book. It's a nice length, design is good, character's good. So I'm going to put it to you. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you think you're going to read it? Have you already read it? Have you got any book recommendations that are similar to this? Because I would love to read more books similar to this story or in the same kind of vein of this. Give me your book recommendations. Let's talk books. One of my favourite conversations ever. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Talk to me about books in the comments. I'd really appreciate it. Love recommendations, love to talk about books. The next book review that's coming up in this series is here. That's your spoiler. See you next time. Bye everyone.